The stars burned cold and silent outside the viewport of the human warship Iron Will. Commander Park Do-hyun stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the massive Valari flagship grow larger as they approached. The enemy ship was beautiful in a terrible way. It stretched across the darkness like a silver blade, covered in lights that pulsed with soft purple energy. Do-hyun was 34 years old. He had black hair cut short in military style, and his face carried the marks of too many battles and too little sleep. His eyes were dark and tired, but they held a fire that refused to die. He had been fighting the Valari for 8 years now. 8 years of blood and loss, and watching good soldiers die in the cold emptiness of space. "Commander," said Lieutenant Kim So-min from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with sharp eyes and quick hands on the control panel. "We are in range. The boarding pods are ready." Do-hyun nodded slowly. He did not turn to look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on the enemy flagship. Somewhere inside that ship was Princess Yuna of the Valari Empire. She was the daughter of Emperor Varric, the ruler who had started this war. Intelligence reports said she was aboard, commanding the fleet that had destroyed 3 human colonies in the past month. 3 colonies. 15 million people. Gone in fire and silence. Do-hyun remembered the images. He remembered the burned cities, the empty streets, the toys left in the dust. He remembered the names of the dead scrolling across his screen, too many to read, too many to count. "Launch the pods," he said. His voice was calm and cold. "All teams, prepare for breach." The Iron Will shuddered as 12 boarding pods shot forward into the darkness. Each pod carried 10 soldiers, the best fighters humanity had. They wore heavy armor painted black, and they carried weapons designed to kill Valari warriors. Do-hyun was in the first pod because he never asked his soldiers to do something he would not do himself. The pod was small and cramped. Do-hyun sat with his squad, feeling the vibration of the engines through his seat. Private Lee Ji-woo sat across from him, checking his rifle for the 10th time. Ji-woo was the youngest in the squad, only 19, with a round face that still looked like a boy's. He had joined after the Valari destroyed his home planet. "Commander," Ji-woo said quietly, "do you think she's really there? The princess?" Do-hyun looked at the young soldier. He saw fear in those eyes, but also something else. Hope, maybe. Or perhaps just the need for something to believe in. "Intelligence says she is," Do-hyun replied. "But it doesn't matter. Our mission is to disable the flagship and capture any high-value targets. Stay focused on the mission." Ji-woo nodded and went back to checking his weapon. The pod struck the hull of the Valari flagship with a terrible crash. Metal screamed against metal. The front of the pod glowed red as cutting lasers burned through the enemy hull. Smoke filled the small space, and alarms rang in everyone's ears. Then the pod opened, and they were inside. The corridor of the Valari ship was strange and alien. The walls curved like the inside of a shell, covered in patterns that seemed to move when Do-hyun looked at them too long. The light was purple and soft, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. The air smelled sweet, like flowers from a world humans had never seen. "Move," Do-hyun ordered. 2 by 2. "Watch your corners." The squad moved forward, weapons raised. Their boots made no sound on the smooth floor. The only noise was their breathing inside their helmets and the distant hum of the ship's engines. They met the first Valari guards at the end of the corridor. The aliens were tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected the purple light like mirrors. Their eyes were large and black, without any white, and their faces showed no expression that humans could read. They wore armor that looked like it was grown rather than made, and they carried weapons that shot beams of burning light. The fight was fast and brutal. Do-hyun fired 3 shots, and 2 Valari fell. Ji-woo got the third one with a burst from his rifle. More guards came running from side passages, and the corridor filled with the sound of weapons and the flash of light. Sergeant Choi Min-ho took a hit to the shoulder. He grunted in pain but kept fighting, his left arm hanging useless at his side. Corporal Bae Soo-jin dragged into cover and applied emergency medical gel to the wound. "Keep moving," Do-hyun shouted. "We don't have time." They pushed forward, leaving dead Valari behind them. The ship was like a maze, corridors branching and twisting in ways that made no sense to human eyes. But Do-hyun had studied the ship's layout from stolen data files. He knew where to go. The royal chambers were at the heart of the flagship, protected by the strongest shields and the best warriors. As Do-hyun's squad approached, the resistance grew fiercer. More Valari came at them, some wearing the special armor of the royal guard, fighters trained since birth to protect the imperial family. Private Han Yoonji fell first. A beam of light cut through her chest plate, and she dropped without a sound. Do-hyun saw it happen, saw the light go out in her eyes, and he felt something cold settle in his heart. But he kept moving. He had to keep moving. They lost 2 more soldiers before they reached the doors to the royal chambers. Great doors made of some dark metal, covered in symbols that glowed with inner fire. Do-hyun planted explosive charges, while his remaining squad held off the Valari guards still coming at them from behind. "Fire in the hole," he shouted. The explosion was massive. The doors blew inward, and smoke and dust filled the air. Do-hyun was through the opening before the debris had finished falling, his rifle up and ready. The royal chambers were not what he expected. The room was large and round, with a ceiling that showed the stars outside as if there were no ship around them at all. The walls were covered in plants, real living plants with flowers of every color. Water ran somewhere, a gentle sound that seemed wrong in this place of war and death. The air was warm and smelled of growing things. And in the center of the room, standing alone, was Princess Yuna of the Valari Empire. She was not what Do-hyun expected either. The intelligence reports had described her as a monster, a killer, the daughter of the emperor who ordered the deaths of millions. Do-hyun had imagined her as something terrible, something easy to hate. But she was small, smaller than most Valari, barely taller than a human woman. Her silver skin glowed softly in the starlight, and her large black eyes reflected the cosmos above them like pools of night sky. She wore a simple white robe, no armor, no weapons. Her hands were empty and open at her sides. She looked young. She looked like someone's daughter. Do-hyun pushed that thought away. He raised his rifle and aimed at her heart. "Don't move," he said. His voice came out harsh and cold. "By the authority of the United Human Coalition, you are under arrest for crimes against humanity." Princess Yuna did not move. She did not run or scream or beg for her life. She simply stood there, looking at him with those strange black eyes. Her face showed no fear, no anger, nothing that Do-hyun could understand. Behind him, he heard his remaining squad enter the room and spread out, covering all the exits. There were only 5 of them left now. 5 out of 12. 7 good soldiers dead in the corridors of this alien ship. "On your knees," Do-hyun ordered. "Hands behind your head." Still, the princess did not move. She tilted her head slightly, studying him like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft and musical, carrying an accent that made human words sound like a song. "You are their leader," she said. It was not a question. "I said get on your knees," Do-hyun repeated. His finger was on the trigger. His hand was steady. "I won't ask again. You have killed many of my guards today," Princess Yuna continued as if he had not spoken. "You have fought through this ship with great courage and skill. You have lost many of your own people. She paused, her eyes moving over the faces of the surviving soldiers. And yet, you came anyway. You kept coming. Da-Yun felt anger rising in his chest. Your father's fleet destroyed 3 of our colonies. 15 million people. Men, women, children. All dead. Yes, the princess said simply. I know. The casual way she said it made Da-Yun's blood run hot. His grip tightened on the rifle. One squeeze of the trigger, and it would be over. Justice for 15 million dead. Justice for the soldiers he had lost today. Justice for 8 years of war. You know, he said through clenched teeth. That's all you have to say? You know? I know many things, Commander. She used his rank as if she had known it all along. I know that you are tired. I know that you have seen too much death. I know that you carry the weight of many lost lives on your shoulders. Her voice was gentle, almost kind. I know that you want to kill me. You're damn right I want to kill you. Then why haven't you? The question stopped Da-Yun cold. His finger was on the trigger. He had a clear shot. There was nothing stopping him. And yet something held him back. Something he could not name. The princess took a step forward. Da-Yun's squad shouted warnings, raised their weapons higher, but she paid them no attention. Her eyes stayed fixed on Da-Yun's face. I have a question for you, Commander, she said. One question. Will you answer it? Da-Yun said nothing. His rifle was aimed at her head now. If she took another step, he would fire. He told himself he would fire. Why? Princess Yuna asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it filled the room like thunder. Why do humans fight? It was not the question Da-Yun had expected. The silence in the royal chambers stretched long and heavy. Commander Park Da-Hyun still held his rifle aimed at Princess Yuna, but his arms were beginning to ache. Not from the weight of the weapon, but from something else. Something inside him was shifting, cracking like ice in spring. The princess waited. She had all the patience of the stars above them, eternal and calm. Her question hung in the air between them, impossible to ignore. Why do humans fight for strangers? Da-Hyun thought of Private Han Yoonji, who had died in the corridor not 10 minutes ago. Yoonji was from Mars Colony 4. She had joined the military because the Valari had killed her parents in the first year of the war. She had no connection to the colonies that were destroyed last month. Those people were strangers to her. And yet she had come here anyway, had fought and died to avenge them. He thought of the other soldiers who had fallen today. Corporal Song Tai-woo, who had left behind a wife and 2 children on Earth. Specialist Kim Hana, who had been counting the days until her service ended so she could go to medical school. Private Yoon Yemen, who had never even seen Earth. Born on a colony ship traveling between stars. None of them had known the 15 million dead. None of them had personal reasons to be here. And yet they had come. They had fought. They had died. I'm waiting, Commander, Princess Yuna said softly. I have asked this question to many humans before. Prisoners mostly. Soldiers we captured in battle. Do you know what they told me? Da-Yun did not answer. His jaw was tight, his teeth clenched. They could not answer either, the princess continued. They said things like duty and honor and justice. But those are just words. Other species have duty. Other species understand honor. And yet, they do not do what humans do. She began to move slowly, walking in a circle around Da-Yun. He turned to keep his weapon trained on her, but she paid it no attention. It was as if the rifle did not exist, as if the 5 human soldiers pointing weapons at her were nothing more than furniture. The Kalari fight only for territory, she said. They will die to protect their breeding grounds, but they will not lift a finger to help another Kalari clan. The Dreth fight for resources. They measure every battle in terms of gain and loss, and they never spend more than they expect to receive. The Vorn fight for domination. They want to rule, to control, to be above all others. She stopped walking and turned to face Do-Yun again. Her black eyes were deep and strange, filled with something that might have been curiosity or hunger or sadness. "But humans," she said, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "Humans fight for strangers. Humans send their children to die for people on the other side of the galaxy. Humans build ships and weapons and armies, not to gain territory or resources or power, but to protect those they have never met. What's your point?" Do-Hyun demanded. His voice was rough and tired. "You want to know why we fight? We fight because your people started killing ours. But you were killing each other long before my people came," Princess Yuna said. "Your history is full of war. Humans have fought humans since the beginning of your species. And yet, again and again, I see the same pattern. Soldiers dying to protect villages they have never visited. Warriors sacrificing themselves for children they have never held. Entire nations going to war to free people they have never spoken to." She shook her head slowly, and her silver hair caught the starlight. "It makes no sense," she said. "It is illogical. It is wasteful. And yet it is the most terrifying thing I have ever seen." Lieutenant Kim Summon's voice crackled in Do-Hyun through his communication device. "Commander, we have incoming. Valari reinforcements are 5 minutes out. We need to extract now." Do-Hyun heard her, but he did not respond. He could not look away from the princess. She was saying something important, something he needed to understand. He just did not know what it was. "Terrifying?" he asked. "You think humans are terrifying?" "Yes," the princess said it simply, without shame. "My father thinks your species is weak because you waste resources on those who cannot repay you. He thinks you are foolish because you die for causes that bring you no benefit. He believes that we will win this war because we are stronger, smarter, more efficient." She paused, and something changed in her eyes. A flicker of something that looked almost like fear. "But I have studied you," she said. "I have watched your battles. I have read your histories. And I know something my father does not." "What's that?" "You cannot be defeated." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "Not really. Not completely. You can be beaten in battle. You can lose ships and soldiers and colonies. You can be pushed back, broken, scattered to the stars. But you will always come back. You will always fight again. Because there will always be humans willing to die for strangers." Private Lee Ji-woo shifted nervously behind Do-Hyun. "Commander, we really need to go. The reinforcements." "Quiet," Do-Hyun said. He did not take his eyes off the princess. "You still haven't answered my question. What's your point? Why are you telling me this?" Princess Yuna smiled again, that same sad, strange smile. "Because I want to understand," she said. "I have asked this question 100 times, and I have never received an answer that satisfied me. I have tortured prisoners, bribed captives, interrogated dying soldiers with their last breath. None of them could explain it." She took a step closer to Do-Hyun. He felt his finger tighten on the trigger, but he did not fire. "You are different," she said, looking into his eyes. "I can see it. You are a leader. Your soldiers follow you into death because they believe in you. You have lost friends, family, everything. And yet, you keep fighting." "I fight because it's my duty," Do-Hyun said, but the words felt hollow in his mouth. "No," the princess said. "That is an excuse, not an answer. Duty is a box you put around something to make it seem smaller. What is inside the box, Commander? What is the real reason?" Do-Hyun's hands were shaking now. He could feel sweat running down his back inside his armor. The princess was too close. Her questions were too sharp. She was cutting through all his defenses, all the walls he had built around his heart. "I don't know," he admitted. The words came out before he could stop them. "I've never thought about it. I fight because someone has to. Because if I don't, who will? But why you?" The princess pressed. "Why do you care about people you have never met? Why does their suffering keep you awake at night? Why does their death feel like a weight on your soul?" "Because they're people," Do-hyun shouted. The words exploded out of him, loud and raw. "Because they have families and dreams and fears. Because every one of those 15 million dead was a person who deserved to live. Because children shouldn't die in fire while their parents watch. Because no one should suffer alone." His chest was heaving. His eyes were wet. He did not know when he had started crying, but tears were running down his face inside his helmet. The princess stood very still, watching him with those deep black eyes. Her face showed no expression, but something in her posture had changed. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile. "And that," she said quietly, "is why humans are terrifying." "Commander!" Lieutenant Summon's voice was urgent in his ear. "The reinforcements are 3 minutes out. We have to move now." Do-hyun heard her, but he could not move. He was frozen in place, his rifle still pointed at the princess, his tears still falling. Everything he believed, everything he had fought for, was churning inside him like a storm. "You feel it," Princess Yuna said. "You feel the pain of strangers as if it were your own. You look at people you have never met, and you see yourself. You see your family. You see everything you love." She tilted her head, stunning him. "It is a gift and a curse. It drives you to greatness and destroys you at the same time. What do you want from me?" Do-hyun asked. His voice was broken and tired. "Why are you asking me these questions? I came here to capture you or kill you. I'm your enemy. Why do you care what I think?" "Because I want to know if there is another way," the princess said. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. "What do you mean?" Do-hyun asked. Princess Yuna looked up at the stars above them. The ceiling of the royal chambers showed the galaxy in all its glory, billions of points of light scattered across the darkness. Somewhere out there, human colonies were burning. Somewhere out there, Valari ships were dying. The war stretched across light years, endless and terrible. "My father started this war because he feared you," she said. "He saw a species that could not be controlled, could not be bought, could not be predicted. He saw soldiers who would die for nothing, who would sacrifice everything for people they had never met. And he was afraid." She turned back to face Do-hyun. "Fear makes us do terrible things," she continued. "My father ordered the attacks on your colonies because he believed that if he killed enough of you, if he made you suffer enough, you would stop fighting. He thought he could break your spirit." "He was wrong," Do-hyun said flatly. "Yes, I know." The princess's voice was heavy with sadness. "Every attack, every death only makes you fight harder. Every colony we destroy, you build 10 more soldiers from the ashes. Every human we kill, 10 more rise to take their place. My father does not understand this. He cannot understand this. He is Valari, and we do not think." The escape from the Valari flagship was chaos and fire and screaming metal. Commander Park Do-hyun ran through corridors that were now filled with alarms and flashing lights. Princess Yuna ran beside him, her bare feet making no sound on the smooth floor. His remaining squad formed a protective circle around them both, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. "Left!" the princess shouted. "The main corridor is blocked ahead." Do-hyun did not question how she knew. He turned left, and his squad followed. Behind them, the sound of Valari guards was growing closer. Boots on metal, weapons charging, voices shouting orders in a language that sounded like singing. They burst through a side door and found themselves in a massive hangar bay, Valari shuttles line the walls, sleek and silver, like fish made of metal. The ceiling was open to space, protected only by a shimmering force field that held the air inside. There! Doheen pointed at the nearest shuttle. Can you fly that thing? Yes, Princess Yuna said. But we will be shot down the moment we leave the ship. Let me worry about that. Dohyun activated his communication device. Summon, do you copy? Lieutenant Kim Summon's voice came through, broken by static. Copy, Commander. We see you on sensors. What's the situation? We have the package. We're taking a Valari shuttle from the main hangar bay. I need covering fire in 60 seconds. Understood. The Iron Will is moving into position now. Dohyun turns to his squad. Jiwoo, Minho, secure the shuttle. Sujin, cover our backs. Move. They ran across the hangar bay as the first Valari guards burst through the doors behind them. Energy beams cut through the air, burning holes in the metal floor and walls. Corporal Bae Sujin turned and fired back, dropping 2 guards before a beam caught her in the leg. Go, she shouted as she fell. I'll hold them. Dohyun hesitated for half a second. Everything in him wanted to go back, to help her, to not leave another soldier behind. But there was no time. There was never any time. Sujin, he said. I said go, Commander. She was propping herself against the shuttle, firing at the guards with one hand while the other held her bleeding leg. Get the princess out of here. That's an order. It was not her place to give orders. But Dohyun understood what she meant. She was choosing this. She was choosing to die so that strangers could live. Just like humans always did. He turned and ran for the shuttle, pulling the princess along with him. Private Lee Ji-woo had already opened the hatch, and Sergeant Choi Minho was inside, trying to figure out the alien controls. I cannot read this, Minho said, frustration in his voice. His wounded shoulder was still bleeding through the medical gel. It's all symbols. Princess Yuna pushed past him and sat in the pilot's seat. Her silver fingers danced across the controls, and the shuttle hummed to life. Strap in, she said. This will not be gentle. The shuttle lifted off just as more guards poured into the hangar. Energy beams peppered the hull, but the shields held. Through the viewport, Dohyun saw Corporal Bae Sujin still firing from behind her cover, even as the guards closed in around her. Then the shuttle shot through the force field and into the cold darkness of space, and he could not see her anymore. Iron Will, this is Commander Park, Dohyun said into his communicator. We are clear. Need immediate pickup at these coordinates. Copy that, Commander. We have you on sensors. Enemy ships are moving to intercept. The space around them was full of war. Valari ships were everywhere, firing beams of purple light at the human fleet. The Iron Will was returning fire, its guns blazing, its shields flickering under the assault. Other human ships were doing the same, a desperate dance of death among the stars. Princess Yuna flew the shuttle like she had been born for it. She twisted and turned through the crossfire, dodging beams and missiles with movements that seemed impossible. The shuttle shook and screamed, but it did not break. Your ship is ahead, she said, pointing at the Iron Will. Hangar bay is open. Can you make it? I can try. She pushed the shuttle forward, straight toward the human warship. Valari fighters tried to intercept, but human pilots dove in to protect them, sacrificing their own ships to clear a path. Dohyun watched through the viewport as 2 human fighters exploded in flames, their pilots dying so that he and the princess could escape. More strangers. More sacrifices. More humans doing what humans did. The shuttle slammed into the hangar bay of the Iron Will hard enough to throw everyone against their straps. Metal screamed and sparks flew as the alien ship scraped across the deck and crashed into the far wall. But they were inside. They were alive. The hangar bay doors closed behind them, and the Iron Will jumped to faster than light speed, leaving the battle behind. For a long moment, no one moved. They sat in the ruined shuttle, breathing hard, feeling the ship around them shake as it traveled through dimensions that human minds could not understand. Then Private Lee Jiwoo spoke, his voice small and scared. "We lost them all," he said. "Yunji, Taiwu, Hannah, Yemen, Sujin." He was crying, tears running down his young face. "They're all gone." Do-hyun unbuckled his straps and stood up. His whole body ached. He had taken hits during the fighting that he had not even noticed until now. But the pain was nothing compared to the weight on his heart. "They knew the risks," he said quietly. "They chose to come. But why?" Jiwoo looked at him with red eyes. "Why did they have to die?" "For." He pointed at the princess with an angry finger. "She's the enemy. Her father killed millions of our people. Why did we lose everything to save her?" Princess Yuna said nothing. She sat in the pilot's seat, her hands in her lap, her black eyes fixed on the floor. She looked small and alone, surrounded by humans who had every reason to hate her. "Because she's not her father," Do-hyun said. The words came out slowly, heavily, like stones dropping into water. "Because she asked a question that made me realize something." "What question?" Jiwoo demanded. What could she possibly ask that was worth their lives? Do-hyun looked at the princess. She raised her head and met his eyes. In that moment, something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. She asked why humans fight for strangers, Do-hyun said. And I couldn't answer her. Not really. I've been fighting this war for 8 years, and I never stopped to ask why. I just did it because it was the right thing to do. He turned back to Jiwoo. But now I think I understand, he continued. We fight for strangers because we see ourselves in them. Every person out there, no matter how far away, no matter how different, is a mirror. They feel pain like we do. They love like we do. They fear and hope and dream like we do. And when we let them suffer alone, we lose a part of ourselves. Jiwoo shook his head, tears still falling. That doesn't bring them back. That doesn't bring Yoonji back. No, Do-hyun agreed. It doesn't. Nothing will bring them back. But they didn't die for nothing. They died because they believed that every life matters. They died because they refused to let the universe be cold and empty and cruel. They died as heroes, Jiwoo, and we have to make sure their sacrifice means something. The young soldier said nothing. He just sat there, crying, mourning friends who would never come home. Princess Yuna stood up slowly. She walked over to Jiwoo and knelt down in front of him, her white robe pooling around her on the deck. I am sorry, she said. Her voice was soft and sincere. I know those words mean nothing. I know that you hate me and everything I represent. But I'm sorry for what my father has done. I'm sorry for the lives that have been lost on both sides. Jiwoo looked at her with red eyes. Sorry doesn't bring them back. No, the princess agreed. It does not. But it is a start. She reached out and took his hand in hers. Her silver skin was warm against his. I want to end this war. I want to stop the killing. I do not know if I can, but I want to try. Will you help me? Jiwoo stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Do-hyun, at Sergeant Minho, at the ruined shuttle around them and the ship that had brought them to safety. I don't know, he said finally. I don't know if I can forgive. I am not asking for forgiveness, Princess Yuna said. I am asking for a chance. A chance to prove that not all Valari are monsters. A chance to build something better than this endless war. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of faster-than-light speed. Through the viewport, Do-hyun could see stars again, real stars in real space. They were far from the battle now, far from the death and destruction. Commander, Lieutenant Summon's voice came through the speaker system. Admiral Yang wants to see you immediately. He's not happy about our guest. Diane sighed. He had expected this. Bringing an enemy princess onto a human warship was not exactly standard procedure. There would be questions. There would be anger. There might even be a court-martial. But that was a problem for later. Right now, he had to help his squad. He had to mourn his dead. And he had to figure out what to do with a Valari princess who wanted to end a war. "Tell the Admiral I'm on my way," he said. He looked at the princess. "You stay here. Don't talk to anyone until I come back." "Where are you going?" she asked. "To explain to my commanding officer why I brought the daughter of our greatest enemy onto his ship instead of killing her. Will he understand?" Donghyun laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Probably not. But I'll make him listen. That's all I can do." He walked toward the hatch, then stopped and turned back. "You asked me why humans fight for strangers," he said. "I gave you part of the answer, and the Ro Admiral Yang Jungwoo was a man carved from stone." He stood behind his desk in the command center of the Iron Will, his gray hair cut short, his eyes hard as iron. He was 60 years old and had been fighting wars since before Do-yoon was born. His face was covered in scars, and his left arm was made of metal, a replacement for the one he had lost to a Valari blade 20 years ago. "You did what?" he said, his voice quiet and dangerous. Commander Park Do-yoon stood at attention, his eyes fixed on a point above the Admiral's head. "I captured Princess Yuna of the Valari Empire, sir. She is currently being held in the shuttle bay under guard." "Captured?" The Admiral laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "You call it captured. I call it something else, Commander. I call it treason. Sir, if you would let me explain." "Explain?" Admiral Yang slammed his metal fist on the desk, leaving a dent in the surface. "Explain why you brought the daughter of Emperor Varric onto my ship. Explain why 7 of your soldiers died so you could bring the enemy into our home. Explain why I shouldn't have you thrown in the brig right now." Do-yoon took a deep breath. "She wants to help us end the war, sir." The Admiral stared at him. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he started laughing, a harsh sound that filled the command center and made the junior officers look away in discomfort. "End the war," he repeated. "The Princess of the Valari Empire wants to help us end the war. Do you hear yourself, Commander? Do you understand how insane that sounds?" "Yes, sir. But I believe her." "You believe her?" Admiral Yang walked around his desk, his metal arm gleaming in the light. He stopped in front of Do-yoon, close enough that the commander could smell the coffee on his breath. "I've been fighting the Valari for 30 years. I've watched them burn our colonies. I've held dying soldiers in my arms. I've sent letters to parents telling them their children won't be coming home. And you're telling me the Valari princess, the daughter of the monster who started all this, wants to help us?" "Yes, sir. Why?" The Admiral's voice was sharp. "What could possibly make you believe that?" Do-yoon hesitated. How could he explain what had happened in the royal chambers? How could he describe the way the princess had looked at him, the questions she had asked, the things she had made him feel? "She asked me a question, sir," he said finally. "She asked me why humans fight for strangers." Admiral Yang frowned. "What kind of question is that?" "The kind that made me think, sir. She's been studying humans for years. She knows more about our history, our culture, our psychology than most humans do. And she doesn't understand us. She doesn't understand why we die for people we've never met. So she's looking for answers. And in looking for answers, she started to see the war differently. She sees that we can't be beaten, not really. She sees that every attack on us only makes us stronger. She believes that if this war continues, both sides will be destroyed." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. His hard eyes searched Do-hyun's face, looking for something. Lies, maybe. Or weakness. Or madness. And you think she's telling the truth, he said finally. I do, sir. Even though she's the enemy. Even though her father has killed millions of our people. Even though bringing her here has put every person on this ship at risk. Yes, sir. Admiral Yang turned away and walked to the viewport. The stars outside were cold and distant, indifferent to the struggles of the tiny beings who lived among them. You know what the council will say, he said without turning around. They'll want to execute her, or use her as a bargaining chip, or torture her for information. I know, sir. And you think that would be wrong. It was not a question, but Do-Hyun answered anyway. I think it would be a mistake, sir. She's more valuable alive and willing to help than dead or broken. The Admiral was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired. I lost my daughter in the first year of the war, he said. She was a doctor on Kepler Station. The Valari destroyed it without warning. No evacuation, no prisoners. 3,000 people, including my little girl, gone in the time it takes to blink. Don said nothing. He had not known this about the Admiral. I've spent 20 years hating the Valari, Admiral Yang continued. I've dedicated my life to making them pay for what they did. Every time we win a battle, every time we destroy one of their ships, I feel a little bit of satisfaction. It doesn't bring her back. It doesn't fill the hole in my heart. But it's something. He turned to face Do-Hyun again, and his eyes were wet. And now you're asking me to let the princess of the Valari Empire live. You're asking me to work with her. To trust her. Yes, sir. Give me one reason why I should. Do-Hyun thought about everything that had happened in the past few hours. The battle. The deaths. The questions. The answers. Because that's what your daughter would have wanted, he said quietly. She was a doctor, sir. She dedicated her life to saving people, not killing them. If she were here, what would she tell you to do? Admiral Yang's face crumbled. For a moment, he was not an admiral or a warrior or a leader of men. He was just a father who had lost his child. She would tell me to give peace a chance, he said, his voice breaking. She always believed that people could change. She always thought that if we just talked to each other, we could find a way to stop fighting. Then let's try, sir. Let's see if the princess is telling the truth. Let's see if there's another way. The Admiral stood there for a long moment, struggling with himself. Do-Hyun could see the war inside him, the battle between hatred and hope, between revenge and redemption. Finally, Admiral Yang straightened his shoulders and wiped his eyes. Bring her to me, he said. I want to talk to her myself. Yes, sir. Do-Hyun saluted and turned to leave. He was almost at the door when the Admiral spoke again. Commander, sir, if she's lying, if this is some kind of trick, I will execute you both personally. Do you understand? Yes, sir. I understand. Do-Hyun walked through the corridors of the Iron Will, his mind racing. He had bought them time, but nothing more. Everything now depended on the princess. If she could convince the Admiral, if she could prove that she was sincere, they might have a chance. If not, he pushed that thought away. There was no point worrying about things he could not control. Princess Yuna was still in the shuttle bay, sitting cross-legged on the deck, her eyes closed. She looked like she was meditating or praying, if Valari did such things. Sergeant Minho stood guard nearby, his rifle ready, his eyes never leaving her. Princess, Do-Hyun said, the Admiral wants to see you. She opened her eyes and looked at him calmly. Will he listen? I don't know. But he's willing to talk. That's more than I expected. Princess Yuna stood up gracefully, brushing dust from her white robe. Then let us go. Time is not our friend. My father will know by now that I am missing. He will send ships to find me. They walked through the ship together, human and Valari, enemy an enemy. The crew members they passed stared at the princess with a mixture of fear, hatred, and curiosity. No one tried to stop them, but Do-yoon could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. The command center was smaller than the royal chambers on the Valari flagship, but it had a similar feeling of power and importance. Admiral Yang stood in the center, surrounded by his senior officers. They all looked at Princess Yuna as she entered, and Do-yoon could see their hands moving toward their weapons. "So," the admiral said, "you are the princess who wants to end the war." "Yes." Princess Yuna's voice was calm and steady. "I am Yuna, daughter of Emperor Varrock, heir to the Valari Empire, and I have come to offer you peace." "Peace." The admiral laughed, the same harsh sound as before. "Your father's fleet destroyed 3 of our colonies last month. 15 million people dead. And you speak of peace." "I do. Because I believe that peace is the only way for either of our peoples to survive." "Explain." Princess Yuna looked around the command center, meeting the eyes of each officer in turn. Some looked away. Others glared at her with open hatred. But she did not flinch. "This war has lasted 23 years, she said. "In that time, both sides have lost billions of lives. Entire worlds have been destroyed. Resources that could have built paradise have been wasted on weapons and warships. And for what?" She paused, letting the question hang in the air. "My father believes that the Valari can win this war through strength alone. He believes that if we kill enough humans, you will surrender. He believes that fear and death are the keys to victory." "He's wrong," Admiral Yang said flatly. "Yes, he is wrong. And I have spent my life trying to make him see that." Her voice was filled with frustration and sadness. "Humans do not respond to fear the way other species do. When you threaten them, they fight harder. When you kill them, they multiply. When you destroy their homes, they build new ones and come back stronger." She shook her head slowly. "Every attack we make creates 1,000 new soldiers. Every colony we destroy creates 1,000,000 new enemies. We are not winning this war, Admiral. We are feeding it." Admiral Yang studied her for a long moment. "And what do you propose?" "I propose a ceasefire. A meeting between your leaders and mine. A chance to talk instead of fight." "Your father would never agree to that." "My father is not the only voice in the Valari Empire." Princess Yuna stepped forward. The alien princess asked one query. The human dropped his weapon. Part 5. The Dawn 3. Months had passed since the handshake on the Iron Will. "Commander." Park Do-yoon stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, watching the stars spin slowly outside the massive windows. The station was new, built in neutral space by human and Valari engineers working together for the first time in history. It was a symbol of hope, a promise that the future could be different from the past. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of the celebration. Music from both species mixed together in strange harmonies. Voices laughed and talked in 6 languages. The smell of food, human and Valari and things in between, drifted through the air. Today was the day everything changed. "You should be inside," said a familiar voice. "They are looking for you." Do-yoon turned to find Princess Yuna standing in the doorway. She was dressed differently now, in clothes that were part Valari and part human, a symbol of the alliance she had worked so hard to create. Her silver skin glowed softly in the starlight, and her black eyes were warm. "I needed a moment," he said. "It's a lot to take in." She walked over to stand beside him, looking out at the stars. "Yes," she agreed. "It is." The past 3 months had been the hardest of Do-yoon's life. After the handshake, everything had happened so fast. Princess Yuna had contacted her supporters in the Valari Empire, and they had begun planning in secret. Admiral Yang had convinced the human coalition to give peace a chance, though it had taken weeks of arguments and shouting and threats. Then the ceasefire had been announced. Ships on both sides had stopped firing. For the first time in 23 years, no one was dying. That alone would have been a miracle. But what came next was even more amazing. Emperor Varric had refused to accept the ceasefire. He had called his daughter a traitor and ordered her arrest. But Princess Yuna's supporters had moved faster than he expected. They had seized key ships and stations, cutting off his power base. The old emperor had found himself alone, abandoned by the very people he had led for so long. In the end, he had surrendered without a fight. He was now in exile on a distant planet, stripped of his power, watched by guards from both species. The war he had started was finally over. And today, Princess Yuna would be crowned as the new empress of the Volari. "Are you ready?" Do-hyun asked. "No." She smiled, and it was a real smile, full of warmth and hope. "But I will do it anyway. That is what you taught me." "What I taught you?" "You taught me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what must be done even when you are afraid." She looked at him with those deep black eyes. "That is the most human thing about you. Not your bodies or your technology or your history. It is your ability to act even when everything seems hopeless." Do-hyun thought about all the soldiers who had died to bring them to this moment. Yoonji and Taiwu and Hana and Yemen and Sujin. Private Lee Ji-woo, who had finally found peace and was now training new soldiers to be protectors instead of killers. Sergeant Choi Min-ho, who had retired from active duty and was teaching children about the war so they would never forget. Admiral Yang, who had given a speech at the ceasefire ceremony that had made everyone cry. He had talked about his daughter, about the dream of peace she had carried with her to the grave. He had said that this peace was for her, for all the children who had died too young, for all the parents who had lost their reasons to live. "I still don't know if I answered your question properly," Do-hyun said quietly. "Back on the flagship, when you asked why humans fight for strangers, you answered it better than you know," Princess Yuna replied. "But perhaps I can tell you what I have learned in these 3 months. Please." The new empress looked out at the stars, her eyes distant and thoughtful. "Humans fight for strangers because you understand something that no other species does," she said. "You understand that you are all connected. Every human, no matter how far away, is part of the same family. When one suffers, all suffer. When one dies, something dies in all of you." She turned to face him. "Other species see the universe as a competition. We fight for resources, for power, for survival. We see other beings as threats or tools, obstacles or opportunities. But humans," she shook her head slowly, "humans see other beings as extensions of themselves. You feel their pain. You share their joy. You cannot be happy while others suffer. Is that a good thing?" Do-hyun asked. "Sometimes it feels like a curse." "It is both," Princess Yuna said. "It is the thing that makes you weak and the thing that makes you strong. It is your greatest vulnerability and your greatest power." She reached out and touched his chest, right over his heart. "This feeling you have, this connection to others, it is the most precious thing in the universe. It is the reason you fight for strangers. It is the reason you die for people you have never met. And it is the reason I fell in love with your species." Do-hyun felt his heart beating under his silver fingers. He had spent so long hating the Volari, seeing them as monsters and enemies. But standing here, looking into the eyes of the woman who had changed everything, he realized that hate was just another kind of fear, and fear was something humans had learned to overcome. "The ceremony is about to start," he said. "You should go." "Come with me," she said. It was not a command. It was a request, almost a plea. "Stand beside me when I take the throne. Show everyone that this is a true alliance, not just words on paper." Are you sure? Your people might not accept a human standing next to their empress. My people need to learn new ways, Princess Yuna said firmly. They need to see that humans are not enemies to be feared, but partners to be respected. If I stand alone, I am just another Valari ruler. If I stand with you, I am something new. Something that has never existed before. Dohan thought about it. He thought about what it would mean. A human soldier standing beside the Valari Empress on the day of her coronation. He thought about the message it would send to both species, the hope it would create, the fear it would destroy. All right, he said. I'll come. They walked together through the corridors of Unity Station, past crowds of humans and Valari who parted to let them pass. Some stared in wonder, some in suspicion, some in hope. But no one tried to stop them. The Great Hall was filled with thousands of beings. Human diplomats in formal uniforms stood next to Valari nobles in flowing robes. Soldiers from both sides, some missing limbs or carrying scars from the war, stood at attention along the walls. Children peeked through the crowd, human and Valari, too young to remember the hatred their parents had felt. At the front of the hall was a throne made of crystal and light. It was old, older than the empire itself, a symbol of power that had been passed down through countless generations. Soon, Princess Yuna would sit upon it and become Empress Yuna, ruler of 1 billion Valari across 1,000 worlds. But first, there was a ceremony to perform. Admiral Yang stepped forward. He was dressed in his best uniform, his medals gleaming on his chest, his metal arm polished to a shine. In his hands, he carried a small box. Today, we do something that has never been done before, he said. His voice was strong and clear, filling the hall. Today, we end the war not with victory or defeat, but with understanding. Today, we choose peace over hatred, hope over fear, love over death. He opened the box. Inside was a crown, but not a Valari crown. It was something new, made of both human and Valari materials, designed by artists from both species. It glittered with crystals from Earth and metals from the Valari homeworld, a symbol of two peoples coming together as one. This crown was made by human hands and Valari hands, Admiral Yang continued. It represents what we can achieve when we work together instead of against each other. It is a promise that the future will be different from the past. He turned to Princess Yuna, who stood before the throne, her face calm and composed. Princess Yuna of the Valari Empire, do you swear to lead your people with wisdom and compassion? Do you swear to protect the peace we have built today? Do you swear to honor the alliance between our species and to never forget the cost of war? I swear, she said. Her voice rang through the hall like a bell. Then by the authority invested in me by the United Human Coalition, and with the agreement of the Valari High Council, I name you Empress Yuna, ruler of the Valari Empire and partner of humanity. He placed the crown on her head. The hall erupted in cheers. Humans and Valari shouted together, their voices mixing in a sound that had never been heard before. Tears ran down faces on both sides, tears of joy and relief and hope. Empress Yuna turned to face her people, human and Valari alike. Her black eyes shone with emotion, and her silver skin seemed to glow from within. Today is not an ending, she said. It is a beginning of a new era, where we build instead of destroy, where we create instead of kill, where we love instead of hate. She reached out and took Dohin's hand, raising it high for everyone to see. This man taught me why humans fight for strangers, she continued. He showed me that compassion is strength, not weakness. He proved that enemies can become friends, and friends can become family. He is the reason I stand here today, and he is the symbol of what we can become. She looked at Do-hyun, and her eyes were full of something he had never seen in a Valari before. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was love. Commander Park Do-hyun, she said, you asked me once why.